I found out from a newspaper. It was a glossy lifestyle column, The Faces of Modern Elegance. Emily's photograph was centered. Her hair swept back in that careful, effortless way that cost hundreds of dollars. Below it, her new
name shimmered in gold print. Emily Whitmore, her husband's last name. But not the name she was born with, not the one I gave her.
My hands trembled as I held the paper. The edges caught the sunlight slanting through my kitchen window, turning it into a cruel halo. I could hear the kettle whistling behind me, but I didn't move to turn it off. Steam filled the room like breath held too long. The article said, Emily Whitmore, a rising PR executive, represents the new generation of refined women redefining class and legacy. Legacy. Funny word. That. I read that line 3 times before it hit me. My own name wasn't mentioned once. Not in her bio, not in the anecdotes about her upbringing, not even in the polite fiction of daughter of. It was as if I had never existed. And for a moment, a small, foolish moment, I tried to convince myself it was a misprint, that someone forgot, that maybe in the glossy world of edited perfection, mothers were just footnotes not worth printing. But I knew better, because I remembered her voice. That sharp, careful tone she used the last time we spoke, 4 months before the article, when she said, Mom, it's just a name. Don't make it dramatic, as if removing Grant and my husband's name. Her father's name was just a clerical change, not a burial. That day, she was standing outside a restaurant in Manhattan, her phone tucked between her shoulder and ear. I could hear laughter behind her, the kind of laughter that comes from people who think their lives are movies. She sounded like she belonged to them, not to me. She said, People can't even pronounce Grant properly sometimes. Whitmore sounds more elegant. I remember saying, It's your name. Emily, it's who you are. And she laughed softly. That kind of half-sighing laugh that told me the conversation was already over. Who I was, Mom. Now, 4 months later, that single word was echoed through my empty house like a ghost. The kettle finally screamed itself quiet. I turned it off and stared at my reflection in the window. A tired woman, gray at the temples, faint lines tracing her mouth like parentheses. The kind of face no magazine would ever feature. And yet, that face had once been her whole world. I sat down, newspaper still in hand, and whispered to no one. She changed her name to erase me. It sounded dramatic out loud, even to me. But truth doesn't care how it sounds. It just sits there, solid and cold. That night, I didn't eat. I just wandered through old drawers, touching her childhood things. The blue ribbon from her spelling bee, the ceramic bird she made in 5th grade that still had my initials carved on the bottom. To Mom, with love. The irony of that inscription cut deeper than any headline ever could. The next morning, I found a small envelope on my porch, pale pink, no return address. Inside, a wedding invitation. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore cordially invite you to celebrate their renewal of vows. Renewal. Another word for rewriting history. I sat there staring at the card until the letters blurred. Not because of tears, I was too far beyond them. It was more like my eyes refused to read another lie. For years I had told myself that Emily's distance was just busyness. That modern lives didn't have room for small-town mothers with chalk dust on their sleeves and hands that smelled faintly of paper and ink. But holding that invitation, I realized something brutal. My daughter wasn't busy. She was building a life where I didn't fit. When you've lived 72 years, you start to notice how silence collects in corners. After my husband died, the house became too quiet. But after Emily's erasure, that was a different kind of silence. It wasn't absence. It was rejection. I used to teach literature. 34 years of trying to help teenagers find themselves in other people's words. I believed stories could save people. Maybe that was naive, because here I was, a teacher of words, erased by one, Grant, gone. The days that followed were a blur of small humiliations. Neighbors bringing casseroles they thought were comfort. Old colleagues saying, "I saw your daughter in that magazine. You must be proud." And me, smiling politely, saying, "Yes, very proud." As if pride could coexist with heartbreak, but pride is a stubborn creature. It makes you stand straighter even when you're bleeding inside. So I put the paper away, folded neatly under my favorite poetry book, Adrian Rich's Diving into the Wreck. It felt fitting. And then, something strange happened. A letter arrived in my mailbox, this time from a name I didn't recognize, Daniel Ruiz. He wrote, "Dear Mrs. Grant, you might not remember me. I was in your literature class, 1998. You introduced me to Dostoevsky, and it changed how I saw everything. I've just published my first novel, and the protagonist, a teacher named Mrs. G, is inspired by you. The book is dedicated to you. Thank you for saving me before I knew I needed saving. I had to sit down after reading it. My hands trembled worse than they had with the newspaper. A student remembered. A student named me. When the book came out a month later, I ordered it online. I didn't expect much, but then, one evening, my neighbor's granddaughter, a college student, came running up to my porch, breathless. "Mrs. Grant, you're trending on TikTok." I laughed, that absurd, small-town disbelief. Trending? Me? She nodded, showing me her phone. A video was going viral. Meet the real Mrs. G, the woman who inspired Daniel Ruiz's masterpiece. There were thousands of comments, people quoting his interviews, where he said, "She taught me to find meaning in brokenness. My quiet life, suddenly loud. The irony was cosmic. My daughter had tried to bury my name, and now strangers were resurrecting it." That night, I sat by my window with the book in my lap, watching the reflection of moonlight move across the cover. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small, not famous, not even proud, just seen, by a boy who once sat in the back row, too scared to read aloud, by the world, in a way that didn't demand polish or wealth or Whitmore-sized perfection. It was a strange, humbling peace. But deep down, I knew what came next. Because fame, even the soft, accidental kind, has a way of reaching the people who left you. And when my phone rang the next morning, showing a name I hadn't seen in months, Emily Whitmore, I already knew why she was calling. I didn't answer. Not yet. The phone rang 7 times before I silenced it. It wasn't defiance. Not exactly. It was self-preservation. Because if I answered, I knew what would happen. Her voice would slide through the speaker, polished and polite, carrying the tone she used with clients. "Mom," she'd say, warm but rehearsed. "How are you?" And I'd hear the unspoken words underneath. "How famous are you now?" So I didn't answer. I made tea instead. The house smelled of chamomile and rain. The windows were fogging up, framing the gray world outside. It was one of those afternoons when silence felt alive, not empty, but breathing, waiting. I sat at the kitchen table, watching my phone blink on the counter. The name, Emily Whitmore, flashed again and again, until it finally went dark. And yet, silence can only last so long before memory starts filling the gaps. Emily was born on a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day that feels like the world is exhaling. I remember holding her, tiny and pink, in that dim hospital light, her little fingers curling around mine like a promise. Her father, Mark, kept whispering, "She has your eyes. He died when she was 15. People say grief bonds you, but sometimes it wedges a space you can't close. After he passed, Emily changed. She became ambitious, driven, like she was running from something invisible. She wanted to leave town, leave me, leave everything that reminded her of loss. The first time I noticed her shame, it came wrapped in laughter. She was 17, getting ready for prom. I'd sewn her a dress, soft blue satin, the kind that shimmered under light. When she came down the stairs, I told her she looked radiant. But she paused halfway, eyes narrowing at the hem. "Mom, this looks handmade," I smiled. "It is. I spent all week on it." She hesitated, her fingers twitching at the fabric. "Everyone's wearing designer stuff." "Maybe I should just," I interrupted softly. "You look beautiful." Emily, she wore the dress that night, but she never took a single picture in it. Later, I found the dress folded neatly in the closet, still smelling faintly of her perfume, still untouched by joy. That was the first time I realized that love can't always protect your child from shame. Now, at 72, I could see it all clearly. The small signs, the soft evasions, the way she'd avoid introducing me to people at her college events. I'd show up with homemade cookies, and she'd whisper, "Mom, please don't make a scene." I never did. Sometimes, love isn't about what you give. It's about what you hold back. When my neighbor Judy stopped by that evening, she brought over a peach cobbler and the same pitying smile she's worn since my husband died. "Linda, you're trending again," she said, setting the dessert on the table. "That author mentioned you on Good Morning America." I laughed softly. "Did he?" She nodded. "He said you were the first person who believed he could write." I sipped my tea. That's all I ever tried to do. Help them believe. Judy sat down, fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. "So, have you heard from Emily?" The name landed like glass. I stared at my cup for a long moment. She called, and I didn't answer. Judy gave me that look, half empathy, half judgment. Maybe she wants to make things right. "Maybe," I said. "But sometimes people only come back when there's a crowd watching." The truth of it burned. Because I wanted to be wrong. God, how I wanted to be wrong. That night, the rain began again. Soft at first, then relentless. The kind that makes the house hum. I went through the old chest in my bedroom, the one where I kept my letters and photos. There she was, 6 years old, smiling with missing front teeth, clutching a stack of books taller than her. My little reader. Back then, she'd crawl into my lap and ask, "Mom, do you think stories are real?" And I'd tell her, "The best ones are." I didn't realize she'd spent her life trying to rewrite hers. The next morning, I checked my email, a habit I never lost after retiring. Dozens of new messages flooded my inbox. Old students, journalists, strangers, subject lines like, "You changed my life." "Your student's book made me cry. Thank you for existing." Each one chipped away at something heavy I'd carried for years, that invisible guilt mothers wear, wondering if they'd failed their children. Maybe I failed Emily, but maybe I didn't fail everyone. And then I saw it. One email, bolded, unread, from Emily Whitmore. Subject, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for almost an hour before clicking. "Mom, I saw everything online. Your student's book, the interviews. Everyone's talking about you. I'm proud of you, truly. Maybe I didn't say it enough before, but you were always inspiring. I'd love to take you out to lunch. Maybe the Silverleaf downtown? They'd love to have you there. It could be nice for both of us." Love Emily, it was polite. Too polite, like a message sent through layers of glass. But what caught me wasn't the content. It was the phrasing. "They'd love to have you there." Who were they? Her colleagues? Her husband's friends? The same they who'd once whispered that she'd married up? I closed the email. Some silences aren't punishment. their boundaries carved from survival. Days passed. The world kept spinning, my name floating somewhere in the digital sky. I did interviews over the phone, gentle ones, with literary podcasts that spoke in slow, thoughtful tones. I even got a letter from a small university offering to host a talk about the teacher who shaped generations, me, Linda Grant, not erased anymore. But the truth? It wasn't fame that made me feel alive again. It was the quiet belonging to myself. Still, late at night, I'd hear her voice in my mind. That sharp, youthful confidence. The way she used to say, "You always think too small, Mom." Maybe she was right. Maybe I had thought small, not in dreams, but in self-worth. On the 5th night after her email, I woke to a knock on my door. 3 gentle raps. Hesitant, almost childlike. I opened it, and there she was, Emily, standing under the porch light, wearing a beige trench coat and that faint, performative smile I knew too well. The rain had caught in her hair, glimmering like tears she'd never cry. "Hi, Mom." For a moment I just stared at her. The years between us, the silence, the erasure, the pride, all collapsed into that single, trembling moment. "You came," I whispered. "I didn't want to email anymore," she said, stepping closer. "I wanted to see you, in person." Her perfume filled the air, something expensive, cold. A scent that didn't belong to this old wooden house. She looked around, eyes scanning everything. The worn rug, the faded books, the chipped teapot on the stove. I saw that flicker of discomfort she always tried to hide, and then she smiled again. "You've been busy. Everyone's talking about you." I nodded. "So I've heard," she laughed lightly. "You always said stories matter, right? Looks like you were right after all." I looked at her, truly looked. She was beautiful, yes, but fragile in ways money couldn't fix. Her eyes darted from corner to corner as if the ghosts of her childhood embarrassed her. "Would you like some tea?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." As I poured, I caught her watching me, that old searching gaze. The one she used to have as a child when she wanted to ask for something but didn't know how. Finally, she said, "Mom, I think we should talk." I placed the teacup in front of her, the porcelain clinking softly, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Small, tired, but real. "Yes, Emily," I said. "I think so too, but in my heart, I already knew. The talk she wanted, and the one I needed, were not the same. It's strange how someone you raised can look like a stranger when they sit across from you." Emily held her cup delicately, as if even the tea were something she might spill by accident. I could see her wedding ring, large, almost ostentatious, a small universe of diamonds glittering in the low kitchen light. She didn't wear rings when she was young. She used to say jewelry was a cage for the hands. Funny how we all build cages eventually. For a while, neither of us spoke. The rain outside had slowed to a soft patter, the sound of a world tiptoeing around us. I thought about all the years between now and that last phone call. 4 years since she'd last visited. 2 since she'd stopped sending Christmas cards, and yet here she was, sipping my tea like we'd just spoken yesterday. "How's the house?" she asked finally, her tone too casual. "Still feels homey." "Same as ever," I said. "Books multiply when I'm not looking, but I suppose that's not the worst problem to have." She smiled politely. "You always had too many books, and you," I said softly, "always wanted less of them." Her smile faltered. "I was a kid. I know," I said. "Children don't know what they're ashamed of until someone teaches them." Her eyes flicked up, startled, cautious. "Is that what you think I am, Mom? Ashamed?" "I think," I said, setting my cup down gently, "you've spent a lot of your life trying not to look like where you came from." The words hung in the air like slow-falling snow. I didn't say them to wound. I said them because they'd been living in my throat for years. Emily sighed. You always make things sound so poetic. It's not that deep, Mom. I just wanted a fresh start, a name that matched my husband's. That's normal. It is, I said. But erasing where you came from isn't. She looked away, studying the window. Her reflection glimmered against the glass, faint and ghost-like. You don't understand what it's like to work in my world, she said. People judge you for everything. Your clothes, your voice, your parents. Then maybe you're in the wrong world, I said. Her laugh was brittle. That's easy for you to say. You never wanted more than this. This small town, this old house, your books and your students. I smiled faintly. And yet somehow the world found me anyway. That landed. I saw it in the way her expression flickered. Confusion, maybe even envy. She hid it quickly, but a mother sees what others miss. Mom, she began slowly, you're trending for a reason. People love a story like yours. The wise old teacher who changes a life gets discovered late. It's inspiring. And I just thought, maybe we could use that. Together. Use it. I asked, my tone quiet but cutting. She rushed on. Not in a bad way. I mean, I could feature you on one of my PR projects. We're doing a campaign about invisible heroes. You'd be perfect. We'd do interviews, get sponsors, maybe a book deal. Stop. My voice came out sharper than I intended. The sound of it startled even me. Emily froze, her hands clasping her cup. I took a breath. You changed your name to erase me, Emily, and now you want to use mine to build your brand. She blinked, her lips parting slightly. That's not fair. No, I said quietly. It's not. For a long moment she said nothing. Her shoulders stiffened. That same defensive posture she had as a teenager when she'd been caught lying about sneaking out to parties. She looked away, eyes wet but controlled. You think I'm some kind of monster. I think you're lost, I said. And I think you've mistaken success for love. That broke something. I saw it happen, the facade cracking, the little girl underneath peeking through. Her voice trembled. You have no idea what it's like trying to fit in with them. Mom, you walk into rooms where everyone's parents are judges, CEOs, senators, and I say, my mom taught high school English in upstate New York. They smile, but it's that pity smile. The kind that says how quaint. I felt my throat tighten. And you thought a name would change that? I thought it would help me survive it. There it was. The confession behind the polish. Survival, not arrogance. Not malice, just fear. Emily, I said softly, you don't have to survive love. You just have to let it in. She looked at me for a long time, and for a brief second I saw her. Not the executive, not the Whitmore wife, but my daughter. The one who used to curl up in my lap with a flashlight and whisper, just one more chapter, Mom. But then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. Her face closed again, all professionalism and posture. You don't get it, she said. I've worked too hard to throw it away now. I nodded slowly. And yet somehow the work never fills the hole, does it? Her eyes glistened. You think you know everything. No, I whispered. I just remember what it felt like to forget who I was. She set her cup down, too fast, the porcelain clinking. Maybe coming here was a mistake. Maybe, I said. But it's still a visit. She stood, smoothing her coat. You could have answered the phone. I could have, I said. But I needed time to decide if I wanted to be found or just remembered. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she looked on the edge of tears. I didn't mean to hurt you, I know, I said. But sometimes not meaning to doesn't erase the hurt. The silence that followed was heavy, not angry, not bitter, just full of everything we'd never said. Years of missed birthdays, unsent letters, small betrayals disguised as busyness. I walked her to the door. The rain had stopped, but the air was damp, the kind that smells like endings. She stood on the porch, her eyes darting between me and her car, a sleek silver thing that looked allergic to dirt. She said almost in a whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." "I know," I said again. "But you can keep the name if you must. Just remember who gave you your first one." She stared at me, really stared, like she was trying to memorize the shape of those words. Then she nodded slowly and walked to her car. The headlights flared briefly, then disappeared down the wet street. When the house went silent again, I didn't cry. I just stood by the doorway, the smell of her perfume lingering in the air like a ghost that didn't know where to go. That night, I opened Daniel's book again. I read the dedication slowly for Mrs. G, who taught me that broken things still reflect the light. I traced my fingers over the page and whispered, "Maybe one day she'll read this." I didn't mean Emily necessarily. I meant the part of her that still lived somewhere behind the polished mask. The girl who once believed stories could save people. Because maybe, one day, a story might save her too. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself the conversation hadn't shaken me. I baked. I dusted the bookshelves. I rearranged the plants near the window. It's funny how we clean when we're trying not to think, as if rearranging the physical world might tidy the mess inside us. But every night, when the house went still, I'd hear her voice. Maybe coming here was a mistake. The words kept looping, soft and sharp all at once. It wasn't the sentence that hurt. It was what came before, the flicker of something human in her eyes. That fragile thing that almost looked like regret. Almost. On the fourth night, she sent me a text. "I'm sorry about the other day. I shouldn't have come like that. You deserve better than that. I'll call you soon." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, out of mercy. Because sometimes replying just reopens a wound that finally started to close. The next morning, the world came knocking again, literally. A courier arrived with a large envelope. Inside was a contract, embossed with gold lettering, the Whitmore Foundation for Women in the Arts. I skimmed the cover letter, my hands trembling slightly. "Dear Mrs. Grant, we would be honored to present you with the Whitmore Lifetime Achievement Award for Educational Influence in the Arts. The award ceremony will be held in New York City, hosted by Emily Whitmore. We would be delighted if you accepted and attended in person." The irony hit me like cold air. A name that once erased me now wanted to celebrate me. For 2 days, I left the letter untouched on my desk. I thought about Emily, how she might be behind this, trying to stitch together what she'd torn. Or maybe it wasn't that noble. Maybe she just wanted to appear generous on stage, to show the world how gracious she was, honoring the humble roots she'd outgrown. Either way, it wasn't really about me, not yet, but I didn't rip it up. I didn't throw it away, because despite the pride, despite the scars, there was a small, traitorous part of me that wanted to see her again, even if it hurt. Love doesn't vanish when respect does. It just learns to limp. The day of the ceremony arrived like a whisper I couldn't silence. I wore a simple navy dress, the same one I'd worn to Mark's retirement dinner 20 years ago. The fabric had aged, but gracefully. Like me, I suppose. I took the early train to the city, watching fields turn into skylines through the window, the world speeding past, blurring past lives and regrets into one long motion picture. When I reached the venue, a grand hall lined with marble and chandeliers, I almost turned back. There were cameras everywhere. People in tailored suits, laughter that echoed too loudly. I didn't belong there. Not really. Then I saw her. Emily stood near the stage, radiant in a cream gown, her hair coiled perfectly. When she spotted me, something flickered across her face. Surprise, relief, maybe even fear. She hurried over, heels clicking like punctuation marks. "Mom," she said, breathless. "You came." "I did." She looked me up and down, smiling nervously. "You look lovely." "Thank you," I said, though I knew I looked like what I was. A woman from another world entirely. There were people everywhere, shaking hands, murmuring praise. I felt like an exhibit, the subject of a story everyone had read except me. When the lights dimmed, we took our seats. Her husband Charles leaned over and said, "We've heard so much about you." "Mrs. Grant," his voice was warm but distant, like someone greeting a museum relic. I nodded politely, then looked straight ahead. When the time came, Emily took the stage. The spotlight hit her like a confession. She spoke gracefully. She always had that gift. "This award," she said, "goes to someone who taught me, and so many others, that the truest form of art is empathy." My mother, Linda Grant. The applause was loud, generous, even moving. But in the echo of those claps, I heard something hollow, the sound of a story being rewritten in real time. She beckoned me up, smiling brightly, holding the award. I walked to the stage slowly, my heart steady but heavy. She leaned in, whispering, "Thank you for coming. It means the world to me." And I whispered back, "Does it?" Her eyes flickered, not anger, not hurt, just uncertainty, as if, for the first time, she didn't know how to perform her own narrative. We stood side by side for the cameras. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks, freezing us in a moment that looked, from the outside, like forgiveness. But inside, I felt something deeper. Not anger, not even pride, just clarity. I accepted the glass plaque, its engraving catching the light. Then I spoke. "Thank you," I began. "Not just for this recognition, but for reminding me what truly lasts. Titles fade, names change, but the lives we touch, those stay. I used to think the world forgot teachers like me, but maybe we just live on quietly, in the hearts of those who remember." I turned, looking directly at Emily. "Some memories don't need rewriting. They just need to be honored." There was a pause, a soft, collective inhale from the room. Emily's face was unreadable. Then the applause began again. Slower this time, more genuine. After the ceremony, she found me in the hallway. "Mom," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You were incredible." I smiled faintly. I meant every word. "I know." She looked down, twisting her ring. "I just wanted to make things right." "Maybe you did," I said. "Just not the way you think," she frowned. "What do you mean?" I touched her arm gently. "You gave me a stage, Emily, but I already had my legacy. You were supposed to be part of it." She blinked back tears. "Can we try again, please?" Her voice cracked on that last word, a small, frightened sound, and for the first time in years, she didn't sound like a woman running a meeting. She sounded like my daughter again. I hesitated. Then I said quietly, "Trying again means starting over. Not performing, not fixing, just listening." "I can do that," she whispered. I nodded. "Then we'll see." She hugged me, tightly, unexpectedly, and for a brief second, I let her. But when she pulled away, I felt something shift. I realized forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a decision you make every day, one heartbeat at a time. The train ride home was long and quiet. The city lights faded behind me, and the reflection in the window, my face, older but lighter, felt different somehow, like I'd finally set something down. In my lap sat the award. Glass, heavy, beautiful. But I knew that the real prize wasn't on that plaque. It was in the way I could finally breathe without wondering if my daughter's love was something I had to earn. When I got home, the house greeted me with its familiar creaks and sighs. I placed the award on the mantel, beside an old photo, Emily at age 7, missing teeth, holding her spelling ribbon. I traced the photo's edge and whispered, "Welcome home, little one." Outside, the wind stirred the maple leaves, soft and forgiving, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased, I felt whole. Winter came early that year. The first frost arrived before Thanksgiving, frosting the world in white, clean, fragile, temporary. I always loved that stillness, how winter made the world quiet enough for the truth to be heard. It had been 4 months since the award ceremony. Emily hadn't visited again, but she called. Small calls, safe ones. How's your garden? Did you watch that movie I sent? Little islands of connection floating in the distance. She never apologized, not directly. But she didn't need to. The tone in her voice said what words couldn't. I miss you. I'm trying. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all there ever is. The phone rang one Sunday afternoon while I was folding laundry. When I saw her name, Emily Whitmore, on the screen, I almost smiled. Funny how her new name didn't sting anymore. It just looked like someone she'd once been trying to become. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mom, I've been thinking about Christmas." "Oh?" I said, keeping my tone light. "Thinking is always a dangerous start." She laughed softly. "I want to come home. I mean, if you'll have me." I froze. Holding a towel mid-fold, her voice was trembling, not the poised, practiced tone of interviews, but the uncertain sound of a child asking to come back to safety. "You don't have to ask," I said gently. "You've always had a place here." The day she arrived, it was snowing, the soft kind that floats rather than falls. When I opened the door, she stood there with a suitcase and a paper bag of groceries. Her hair was damp, her cheeks red. She looked younger, or maybe just unguarded. "I brought everything for dinner," she said. "Don't argue." "I wouldn't dare," I said, stepping aside. "Inside." She unpacked like someone trying to make up for lost time, chopping vegetables, setting the table, moving through the kitchen she once grew up in as if rediscovering a language she used to speak fluently. At one point, she turned, holding a knife in one hand, and said quietly, "I kept dreaming about this kitchen, the yellow curtains, the smell of stew, the way you'd hum when you cooked." "I still hum," I said, "just lower now. The house doesn't need as much sound." She smiled, but her eyes glistened. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "not just for the name, for everything." I looked at her for a long moment. There was no stage here, no cameras, no audience, just us, the raw, unfinished truth. "I know," I said finally. "I've been sorry too." "For what?" "For loving you so fiercely that I forgot you needed space to fail. I wanted to protect you from the world, but I didn't realize. Sometimes a mother's love can feel like a leash." She swallowed hard. "It never felt like that. It felt like a safety net I ran from." We stood there, 2 women, not mother and daughter for a moment, but 2 human beings who'd each learned how love can bruise when it tries too hard to hold. That night, we ate in the soft glow of the kitchen lamp. The stew simmered, the snow kept falling, and something unspoken began to thaw between us. She looked around and said, "It's smaller than I remember." "That's what growing up does," I said. "It makes rooms shrink and feelings grow." She smiled faintly, then reached into her bag. "I brought you something." She handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a silver locket, simple, elegant. I opened it. On one side was a picture of her as a child. On the other, a photo I'd never seen before, her as an adult with her own daughter. "She's 6, Emily said softly. "Her name's Claire." I froze. "You named her after me?" She nodded. "After the person I tried to forget, but never could." The words cracked something open inside me. all the years of silence, pride, distance, they folded like paper in the rain. I reached across the table, took her hand and whispered, "Then maybe we can start again." "For her, for all of us," she said. Later that night, after she went to bed in her old room, still covered in fading wallpaper and echoes of youth, I sat alone in the living room. The locket glimmered in my hand. Outside, snow blanketed the porch. The world was quiet, the kind of quiet that means peace, not absence. For the first time in years, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about rewriting the past, it's about releasing it, so both people can keep walking forward without dragging the same ghost. A week later, I watched from the window as she and little Claire built a snowman in the yard. Emily's laughter, that sound I'd missed like oxygen, filled the cold air. Claire turned and waved. "Grandma, come help!" And I did. The three of us stood there, red-nosed and shivering, shaping the snow into something new, imperfect, melting but ours. Emily looked at me then, eyes shining. "You know," she said, "Claire keeps asking why we have different last names." "What do you tell her?" I asked. "I tell her it doesn't matter. Because the heart doesn't use names to recognize home," I smiled. "She's a wise one. She gets it from you," Emily said softly. We both laughed, the kind that carries years of ache and release. And in that laughter, fragile, honest, unguarded, I felt it, the long-awaited sound of something finally healing. That night, after they left, I went to the mantel. The award still sat there, polished, beautiful, irrelevant. I picked it up, looked at the engraving again, Linda Grant, Lifetime Achievement. Then I placed the silver locket beside it. The glass caught the lamplight, and for a moment, both glimmered, past and present, pain and peace, mother and daughter. As I turned off the light, I whispered, to the house, to the night, to the years that had both broken and remade me. She didn't erase me. She just had to lose me to find herself. And maybe I had to lose her to remember who I was before I was anyone's mother. And for the first time in a long, long life, I went to sleep not thinking of what was lost, but of everything still left to love. When I was young, I thought the hardest part of motherhood would be the nights, the crying, the fevers, the endless repetition of days. But no, the hardest part came later, the silence that follows when they no longer need you, when your role fades into memory. Yet now, in my 73rd year, silence feels different. It's not an absence. It's a space where love finally has room to breathe. Claire started visiting more often after that Christmas. At first, Emily would come with her, hovering like a careful bridge between us. But by the next summer, Claire was spending weekends alone with me, a ritual we both cherished. She was all light and movement, that kind of curiosity children have before the world teaches them to be polite. She'd ask questions that sliced through time itself. "Grandma, were you famous before I was born?" I laughed. "No, sweetheart. I was just a teacher who talked too much about books. But Mom said people online love your stories." "That's because your mom exaggerates," I said. Though secretly I still checked the comments sometimes. Strangers thanking me for reminding them why words matter. One afternoon, while painting on the porch, she asked, "Why don't you and Mom live together?" I hesitated, because sometimes people love each other so much they need space not to hurt each other again. She frowned. "That's sad." "Yes," I said softly. "But it's also peaceful. Every visit, she'd bring a new word she'd learned. Melancholy, resilience, forgiveness. Her mother's daughter, I thought, her grandmother's heart. I started keeping a journal, not for myself, but for her, a book of small lessons, written in ink that trembled slightly more each month. Lesson 1. Love people for who they are, not for who you wish they'd be. Lesson 2. Never let shame make you forget where you came from. Lesson 3. Pride is heavy. Forgiveness travels lighter. By the time she turned 9, she was reading them out loud to me, slowly, reverently, as if they were spells. Sometimes she'd pause, look up, and say, "Grandma, I think I'll write books too," and I'd smile, feeling something old and broken inside me quietly realign. Emily came less often. Her work kept her in New York now. Panels, conferences, interviews, but her calls became softer, warmer, no more defensiveness, no more careful sentences, just small truths exchanged across miles. "I read your essay," she'd say, "the one about motherhood. It made me cry in the middle of a meeting." And I'd answer, "Then maybe you're finally healing, my girl." Once she admitted, "I tell people about you now, about the teacher who made me believe words can change lives." "That teacher was always your mother," I said. "You just needed distance to see it," we both laughed. It was the laughter of women who had outlived their own storms. In my quieter moments, I thought about legacy, not the digital kind, followers, shares, applause, but the kind that grows in silence. A grandchild remembering the sound of your voice. A daughter realizing that your mistakes were only your way of loving too deeply. A book on a stranger's shelf, with your underline still faintly visible. That's the legacy no one can erase, not even a name change. The summer I turned 75, Emily surprised me with a visit. No cameras, no announcements, just her standing in the doorway, holding a basket of peaches. I was driving upstate and thought, "I'd rather be here than anywhere," she said. We spent that afternoon making cobbler like we used to. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and memory. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You know, Mom, I still use Whitmore professionally, but on my daughter's school forms, I wrote Emily Grant." I didn't speak for a moment. The weight of that quiet admission filled the room. Then I simply nodded. "That's enough," I said. "More than enough." She reached across the counter, took my hand. "I never wanted to erase you. I just didn't know how to carry you with me." "I know," I said, "and I forgave you long before you knew you needed it." That night, after she left, I stood at the window watching her car disappear down the road. The tail lights fading into the distance felt less like departure and more like closure. 2 lights, side by side, until the bend took them out of sight. In that moment, I whispered to myself, some bonds don't need to be repaired. They just need to be remembered. I looked around the small, aging house, the wallpaper fading, the wood creaking under memory's weight, and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Not pride. Not sorrow, peace. That winter, Claire sent me her first short story. It was called The Woman Who Remembered Names. It was about a grandmother who forgets everything except the people she's loved. The last line read, "She may not remember my name, but I remember hers, because she taught me what it means." I cried for a long time, not from sadness, but from the relief of knowing that love, once planted, never dies. It just changes its form. Aging is a strange mercy. It doesn't take from you all at once. It steals gently. A step here, a name there, the strength to open jars or climb stairs. And yet, what it gives back is perspective. A softening. A surrender that feels almost like wisdom. The mornings have become my favorite time. The light comes slow, golden like honey spilling through the curtains. I sit by the window with my tea, the same chair I've had for 20 years, and I watch the neighborhood wake up. There's a young couple across the street now, with a baby who cries like a violin being tuned. The sound doesn't irritate me. It fills the silence. Every generation brings its own music. My health isn't what it used to be. The doctor calls it age-related heart decline. Such a polite phrase for the slow fading of one's rhythm. When I first heard the diagnosis, I didn't cry, I just thought, so this is how the curtain begins to fall. But it wasn't fear I felt. It was gratitude, because I've had a life with full seasons, bitter winters, luminous summers, and a daughter whose love once broke me and then saved me all over again. Emily calls every Sunday now. Sometimes she puts Claire on the phone first. "Grandma," Claire says, her voice bright as morning. "Guess what? I wrote another story. What's it called, sweetheart?" "The Woman Who Taught the Wind to Speak." That sounds magical. "It's about you," she says. "You always listen to the wind like it's saying something." And I smile because she's right. I do. The wind carries memory. It whispers all the words we never said, all the apologies that never found their timing. It's the language of the in-between, between life and death, between mother and child, between goodbye and forever. A few months ago, Emily visited again, this time alone. She arrived quietly, without announcement, carrying only a single bag and that same nervous tenderness she had as a teenager. "Mom," she said, standing in the doorway, "I want to stay a few days." "If that's okay." "It's more than okay," I said. "The house has missed you." She smiled, looking around. "It smells the same, like old books and rosemary?" "Rosemary," I confirmed. "It helps memory." Her eyes flickered, a private recognition. We spent the next few days just being, no grand confessions. No heavy conversations, just presence, cooking, laughing, watching old movies. It felt like borrowing time from a past life. One evening, we sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. Emily was quiet, tracing circles on her mug with her thumb. "Do you ever regret anything?" she asked suddenly. "Everything," I said. "And nothing." She tilted her head, waiting for more. "I regret the ways I tried to shape you into safety," I said. "But not the love that made me do it. I regret staying silent when you needed honesty and speaking when silence would have been kinder." She nodded slowly. "I regret thinking success could replace belonging." We both stared at the horizon, the sky a slow symphony of oranges and purples. "Mom," she whispered, "when you're gone." "What do you want me to tell Claire about you?" I smiled faintly. "Tell her I was flawed, but I tried to love beautifully, even when I failed." She looked at me then, eyes full, mouth trembling. "You did, Mom, you did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching the objects that had gathered my life. The wooden spoon worn smooth by decades of stirring. The bookshelf lined with marginalia and dried petals. The photograph of Emily at 16. Laughing in sunlight, I realized something. We spend half our lives trying to be remembered, and the other half realizing that memory isn't ours to control. It belongs to those we leave behind. A few weeks later, Emily insisted on taking me to the city for a checkup. We stayed at her apartment, elegant, high above the noise. Her world was made of glass and light, but it lacked the smell of earth, of something lived in. On her desk, I saw something that made me pause, a framed essay titled "The Woman Who Taught Me to Speak." It was mine, one I'd written years ago about teaching literature. She'd printed it, signed her name under mine, and hung it on the wall. When she noticed me looking, she said, "It reminds me where I come from." I touched the frame gently. "Then I can go peacefully one day," I said. She turned sharply. "Don't say that, Emily," I said softly. "It's not death that frightens me. It's the thought of leaving something unfinished. But you, my love, you are the completion. Her eyes filled. But she didn't speak. She just sat beside me and rested her head on my shoulder, the way she used to when storms rolled in. For the first time in decades, I felt her heart beating close to mine again. The same rhythm, older now, but in tune. Now, back home, the days move slower. The house breathes with me, creaks when I move, sighs when I rest. I write less now, but I read my old journals. Each page feels like a letter to someone I once was. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know this. I am no longer waiting to be remembered. I am already known. In the laughter of a child, in the softened voice of a daughter, in the pages that still smell faintly of ink and forgiveness. Tonight, as I sit by the window, the last light fades from the hills. The wind carries the scent of rain. I close my eyes and listen, not for words, but for meaning. And somewhere between the quiet and the heart's final echo, I hear it, the unmistakable sound of peace. We spend our lives wanting to be understood, I whisper to the dark. But sometimes love means being remembered kindly, even when we're not understood at all. And for now, that is enough. It is more than enough. I began writing the letters one gray morning in late March. Rain whispered against the window, the kind that turns the world into watercolor. My hands ached, but the ache felt sacred, the body's reminder that something still flows. There would be only 2 letters, one for Emily, one for Claire. Not farewell notes, but bridges, words strong enough to outlast my breath. Letter to Emily, my darling girl, if you're reading this, it means I've gone where sound doesn't travel, but love still does. I want you to know that I never once stopped being proud of you. Not when you changed your name. Not when you forgot to call, not even when I thought you'd forgotten me. You carried the fire I once feared to touch. You built a world larger than the one I could have offered. And though it frightened me, it also filled me with awe. I've kept your childhood drawings in the drawer beside my bed. The crooked hearts, the stick figure families. The one where you wrote, "Mom is my best friend." Every time I saw your signature, Emily Grant, I whispered it out loud. So it wouldn't vanish from memory. You once asked why I never remarried after your father died. The truth is, I already had a love large enough to fill a life. You. Promise me one thing. When regret visits, don't feed it. Let it knock, let it cry, then let it leave. You owe the world your voice, not your guilt. And when you stand at a window and feel a sudden wind, that's me, telling you that everything you became was worth it. With every breath I have left, Mommy sealed it with trembling fingers and pressed the envelope to my lips. Old habit. Old prayer, letter to Claire, my sweet child, you are the bridge between everything I was and everything your mother hopes to be. By the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand that grown-ups break in quiet ways, not with noise, but with silence. When people fail you, listen for the small kindness underneath their clumsiness. It's almost always there. Read good books, laugh loudly, never apologize for feeling too much. Feeling deeply is how we honor being alive. If you ever wonder who you come from, close your eyes and imagine the smell of rosemary and paper. That's me. Love, always. Grandma Linda, I placed both letters inside the wooden box where I kept my wedding ring. My first edition Austen, and a pressed rose from the year Emily was born. Then I slid the box under the bed. A quiet vault of memory. Weeks passed. Spring folded into summer, and the garden began to bloom again. Claire visited often, bringing laughter and crumbs and sunlight. One afternoon, she found me dozing on the porch and whispered, "Grandma, you look like a story that's about to end." I smiled. "Maybe, but it's a good one, isn't it?" She nodded solemnly, then nestled beside me, small head against my shoulder. We watched the wind move through the trees, unseen but always present. A few nights later, I dreamed of the classroom where I'd once taught, the chalkboard clean, desks empty, sunlight pooling through the windows. In the dream, someone had written a single line across the board. "You taught us how to read between the silences." When I woke, I knew it was time, not to leave, but to let go of fear. That morning, I called Emily. She sounded tired but lighter somehow. "Mom, Claire's been talking about you nonstop," she said. "I'll see her soon," I answered. "I'm just finishing something." "Another essay?" She teased. "Sort of," I said. "The last one." We both laughed, soft and knowing. Before hanging up, she whispered, "I love you." "I know," I said. "I love you more for saying it." That night the moon was full, enormous, gentle, impossible to ignore. I opened every curtain, letting the silver light flood the house. Each room shimmered like a memory come to life. I sat in my chair, wrapped in a shawl, breathing slowly. The clock ticked, the wind hummed, and the world kept turning, perfectly indifferent, perfectly kind. I thought of Emily's first cry, Claire's laughter, the students who'd carried my lessons out into the world, and I whispered one final line, not to be written but to be remembered. Legacy is not what we leave behind. It's what keeps living after we're gone. Then I closed my eyes. When Emily and Claire arrived 2 days later, the house was still, the kettle cold, the air faintly scented with rosemary. On the table lay 2 envelopes, side by side, waiting. Emily read hers first. The words blurred through her tears, but she kept reading until the end. Then she looked around and whispered, "You didn't erase her." "Mom, she's everywhere." Claire, small and wide-eyed, climbed into her mother's lap. "Mommy," she said softly, "the wind's talking." Emily closed her eyes. "I know, baby," she murmured. "I know." Every year after that, Claire planted rosemary in the garden by the porch, and each spring, when the breeze carried its scent through the open windows, Emily would whisper, "Hi, Mom," and the curtains would lift as if answering back. Time, I've learned, is not a wall, but a doorway, and love, real love, walks through it endlessly. She didn't erase me. She just needed to forget who I was, so she could remember who she is. And that, in the end, is the kindest kind of forgiveness.